Today, we're going to read Chapter 4, Part 3. Very long chapters in this book, Belonging to Life, by Mary O'Malley. Mary O'Malley, A Journey to Awakening. If I read this whole chapter at once, it's just going to go over even my own head in such ways. These are big words to comprehend as far as life-altering. And so it is best to always take baby steps. My name is Natalie. I'm the Good Shepherd here on our small hobby farm, and so there's no telling how long I'm able to read each day anyway, because once they get loud, there's no point in me continuing to read over their cock-a-doodle-doos. Let's go ahead and dive right into Part 3 of Chapter 4. We live in a society that loves stimulation. Caffeine, action-packed movies, apps on our phones, etc. After a few minutes on something so seemingly bland as a breath, the mind will become bored and start looking for excitement. It goes out into the future or creates a wonderful fantasy. It may rehash yesterday's events, judging everyone's performance, including our own. Or it will drift off into daydreams until, with a start, we remember that we are focusing on our breath. The key to giving ourselves the gift of a daily returning time is to know that a returning practice is not about staying focused on the breath. It took me years to understand this. If we say that we must stay focused on the breath and a good returning practice is measured by how much we are there, then we will still be caught in struggle. The healing comes in returning over and over again whenever we've drifted off into the stories in our head. And we will drift off into them. We've only been tracking thought for decades, but every moment we return, we are not only strengthening the muscle of our attention, we are clearing a pathway back into life. At the beginning, it will be as faint as a deer trail, but every time we return, the path widens and becomes clearer. The deeper we go into listening to ourselves, the more we see that it is not only in returning that we become clear, but it is also in how we return. For a long time in my returning practice, when I noticed that I was lost in thought, I would force myself back, chastising myself for having been gone. Now I can gently and with great tenderness bring my attention back to the breath. At times, our stories can be so loud and persistent that it is difficult to keep track of the breath. Words, silently said to ourselves, can be a skillful way to remind ourselves that we are paying attention to our breath. It can be as simple as counting the in-breaths up to 10. If we space out, we simply start at once again. No judgment, even if you didn't get past 1. We can also say in-breath turn, out-breath turn. Another favorite of mine is here on the in-breath and now on the out-breath. Thich Nhat Hanh, world-renowned Buddhist monk, human rights activist, and author of many books and poems, created a wonderful meditation for children at his retreat center in France. He suggested that they find 10 small stones and hold them in one hand. As they meditated, he invited them to say silently to themselves these following pairs of words. The first word of each pair is said on the in-breath. In the last line, it's the first 2 words. And the second word is said on the out-breath, second 2 in the last line. In, out. Deep, slow. Calm, ease. Smile, release. Present moment, wonderful moment. At the end of each round of words, he told them to shift one of the 10 stones to the other hand. When all of the stones had been shifted, they were then invited to either do another 10 rounds or else simply explore the breath exactly as it is. When the adults in the community learned of this meditation, they began doing it and teaching others how to do it. It has now traveled many times around the world, touching numerous lives. Even though breath has been proven to be a skillful focus, it may not be the one for you. Because I had been deeply scared out of my body when I was young, in the beginning it was terrifying for me to even contemplate paying attention to my body or breath. So I used sight to ground myself here, describing the colors and shapes of the room I was in. Then, when I closed my eyes, my primary focus was the symphony of sounds. Over time, I began to inch my way into my body and eventually into my breath. Know that our minds will be gone a good deal of the time. In our old beliefs around meditation, we believed that we were supposed to do something with thought, transform it, get rid of it, or get above it. Trying to do this, however, usually creates more thought, causing us frustration, which results in our becoming part-time meditators or closet failures. We may go wandering around in the thinking mind 5 minutes or more before awareness kicks in and says, I am lost in thought. When we notice we are gone, we simply return to the breath, even if we only stay there for half of one breath. Each moment of returning is more powerful than you can imagine. A participant at one of my retreats was sitting beside a pond, caught in the struggling mind. When awareness kicked in and she again returned to the living moment, her mind tried to catch her and struggle again by commenting that just a few moments of returning wasn't enough. Wisdom opened her up again by reminding her that the pond in front of her had been created from drops of water. Our healing happens in the same way. From a moment here and a moment there where we reconnect with life, a pool of peace and connection is cultivated. In time, this peace, rather than the struggling mind, slowly becomes the ground of our being. The ability to discover and return to our breath takes us into the next step of awakening, the ability to see our story. The more we return to a focus, the easier it is to see how busy our minds are. Our experience becomes dramatically different when we can have moments of relating to what this busyness is doing, rather than being lost in it. Go back to the experience of moving your finger around in front of you. Rather than following it with your head, keep yourself centered and just watch the finger with your eyes, without moving your head. This is the place where your attention is stable and centered, fostering curiosity about what thought is doing. Just as you can see the finger moving without moving your head, you could see thought without getting lost in it. The way we see thought without getting caught up in it is to name what the mind is doing when we notice that we are not with our focus. Whenever we name to ourselves what thought is doing, we have stepped out of it, at least for a moment. In the beginning, it is difficult to see thought because most of the time we are lost in it. Because of this, naming progresses through stages from a general noting to eventually a very clear ability to see the entirety of the story we took on. The most general level of naming is to silently say to ourselves when we notice that we are no longer on the breath, thinking, or story. Once we have cultivated the ability to return to a focus, noting when thought takes us away and then naming it, the next step is to see what thought is doing. The easiest way to do this is to name the direction thought is going, whether it is leaning into the future or into the past. In the moment of noticing what thought is doing, you are not identified with it and have opened a bit more into the spaciousness of your true being. Naming past and future is one of the primary ways I bring myself back into the moment. In my early years of meditation, I usually experienced a healthy dose of wandering mind. I learned to cut through the fogginess in my mind by noticing if I was thinking about the rest of the day or trying to rework yesterday. In that moment of noticing whether the mind was in the past or the future, the present became more clearly defined. The mind lets go and I discover myself here in the living moment. Another way we can see the direction thought is moving is to use the words planning and remembering. For the mind loves to do both of these. Two other pairs of words can help us to watch the mechanics of thoughts: liking or disliking, and wanting or resisting. Or you can come up with your own words. Seeing and naming the mechanics of thought allows our perspective to broaden, giving us more freedom from the story in our minds. The next step is to see the actual content of our minds. It takes a while to create the stability of attention in which we can actually see what thought is doing without becoming lost in it. Over time, as our attention stabilizes, we will be able to notice and name many different states of mind that formerly caught us in their web. Anger, fuzziness, self-pity, agitation, happiness. Yes, it can take us away too. Wanting, fearing, numbness, boredom. Every time we note a thought without judging or getting lost in it, this weakens its power over us and strengthens our ability to become bigger than our story. As we see the different parts of the conversation in our head, it becomes easier to make contact with the deep and ancient feelings that have run us our whole lives underneath the level of our everyday awareness. In making contact with them lies the possibility of freeing ourselves from their grip. For most of my life, I was terrified. This feeling was so big I wasn't even aware that I was afraid. All I knew was that I didn't like to be with people. As I became able to see it and feel it in my body, I came to know it so well that it no longer controls me. I have now learned how to work with it rather than having it define how I live. The power of noticing and naming can also be seen with the self-judgment we all took on. For me, the counseling and meditation I did for years seemed to minimize these voices of self-judgment enough that I could function in society. But they still lurked in the depths of my being and could come and devour me in a moment. Of course, when I began meditating, they kept up a running commentary about how miserably I was doing. One of the most glorious moments of my life came when, rather than believing what these voices were saying, awareness kicked in and said, "This is just self-judgment." In that moment, for the first time, I saw judgment rather than being lost in it. As we explore our minds in our quiet times, this centered clarity begins to show up in our daily lives. I could still vividly remember one of the first times I was able to relate to anger rather than being lost in it. After having seen and gotten to know anger as it appeared during my meditations, I found myself one day in the middle of a rather heated argument with an acquaintance. Awareness kicked in and said, "Anger is here." Rather than being swept up in the argument, a part of me became fascinated by how anger talked and felt. As I made space for it, I became less invested in being right and more interested in the actual experience. My words and actions come from a different place, and we ended up laughing. My words and actions began to come from a different place, and we ended up laughing about how deeply we had been caught and how passionately we had defended our positions. The ability to see thought and name what it is doing will be, at moments, very crisp and clear, only to move back into the haze as we again become lost in our story. We are not in charge of making or breaking these moments of clarity. All we can do is be willing to return over and over again and name that which takes us away. Eventually, all that we have explored becomes stepping stones into the ability to sit quietly and simply listen to life. Right here, right now. We have used meditation to try to get someplace else, not understanding that everything we long for and everything we truly are is right here, right now. To try to get someplace else only creates more suffering. So, we are being taught how to look at our immediate experience, look in a way that allows us to see through the trance of our ego that is always busy becoming, especially in spirituality. Our focus then becomes curiosity, and the more attentive we become to what is right now, the more we know moments in which life flows without a running commentary of liking and disliking in our heads. We are like children, learning how to walk in consciousness. We first need to crawl to develop our leg muscles and then figure out how to stand, and finally to walk on our own as the muscle of our curiosity is developed. To strengthen this muscle, we have progressed gradually from using our senses to observe life to then noticing that there is a huge difference between thinking about life and being here for life. We then began to explore the stories in our heads by naming a thinking, when we noticed that we were caught again in our minds. In the next step, we opened to noticing the mechanics of thought, and finally to noticing the actual content. Now, as our muscle of curiosity becomes stronger, our awareness remembers that we are that which can observe the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that come and go throughout our lives. In this remembering, we find ourselves resting in an aware heart that is interested in what is showing up in any given moment, but does not identify with it. Don't expect these tools to progress in a linear and tidy fashion in your practice. It just doesn't happen that way. On any given day, we can be back at square one again, having difficulty finding a breath, or without a clue as to how or why, finding ourselves sitting for long moments in a stable and attentive awareness. The key is to simply show up for what is, inviting the comparing and judging mind to take a break. To get to this level of awakening takes time and commitment, but it is definitely worth it. There is something that happens when the body is still that seems to be unavailable when we are moving. The analogy that Jack Kornfield, a well-known meditation teacher and author of many books on awakening, gives is that when a glass of cloudy water is still, the salt falls to the bottom and everything becomes clear. A daily returning practice is the place in which we can see the silt fall away. The power of setting aside time each day to be present for our focus and then noticing what takes us away is enormous, helping us to strengthen our muscles of awareness so we can be present for life. There is something waiting for us here in the living moment, something that we have yearned for our whole lives. It can only be discovered as we stabilize and center our minds. Andy! Take a moment and ask yourself if you are willing to gift yourself with a daily returning practice. This is a much different approach than saying it is something that we must do. To make it a should only creates resistance. I saw this clearly around flossing my teeth. Despite dire warnings from my dentist, I was a part-time flosser for years and came to hate those little boxes of floss that I'd left everywhere in order to force myself into flossing. A major shift came when I realized it was a kind thing to do for my body. It got scratched off of the I have to do list, becoming something that I wanted to do for myself. The same is true for a returning practice. It is one of the most precious gifts we'll ever give ourselves. Be assured that you will wobble with it just as you learned how to ride a bike. The important thing is to keep on returning. Know that every act of being present for life is powerfully transforming. Once we are willing to gift ourselves in this way, rather than following the many rules that have been created over the years around meditation, such as we need to sit in front of an altar, or it is best to sit cross-legged on the floor, our hands must be placed in a particular way, early morning is best, we must sit for 20 minutes twice a day. The most important thing to do is to discover what works for you. In a returning practice, you are not trying to do it right or get to a better place inside. It is all about listening to yourself and recognizing what you are experiencing right now, including what works for you. You may live in an environment where you can only sit at night, or you may have an injury that precludes sitting without support. Listen to yourself and keep it simple. Allow the place where you sit, how you sit, and the length of time that is right for you to come out of your own life and needs. Also, allow them to change and transform over time. It is skillful to choose a quiet place where distractions are at a minimum. Turn off the phone, and if you live with other people, notify them of your intention to have this time entirely to yourself. At the beginning, set aside 10 minutes. If you find 10 minutes too much, try 5. To start, consistency is much more important than the amount of time. If we over-exercise our physical muscles after having been taken a break from working out, we can easily injure ourselves. The same is true for our muscle of attention. Demanding too much may just invite frustration. The mind is like a speeding train with a lifetime of momentum that propels it into constantly becoming. To break this deep addiction to thought, at the beginning of a sit, it can be skillful to connect with a more spacious perspective. What works for me is to feel myself being held by the chair, that is being held by the floor, that is being held by the foundation, that is being held by the earth. As I allow myself then to be held by the earth, I open up into the knowing that the earth is being held by space. In that, I discover that I'm dancing through space in the exact moment that I'm sitting here. In that precious remembering, I pop out of the narrow absorption with only my own story and realize myself as a part of a grand and mysterious process. Sometimes I open to the astounding realization that it took the creativity of the universe billions of years to make this moment, and I became very curious about what is. I then begin to draw the lens of my attention into a more finely tuned focus. First, I pay attention to the space that I am sitting in, grounding in one of my senses in order to enhance that experience. My favorite is hearing. I find it fascinating to focus my attention predominantly on listening. Eavesdropping on my own life, hearing the symphony of sounds appearing and disappearing and noticing that they are always different connects me to the moment that life appears out of mystery. I also wake up my curiosity by asking my body, what is? Noticing what my present experience is. It may be tiredness, exhilaration, contentment, or discomfort. There may be a particular sensation that needs my attention, a pain in my neck, a hungry stomach, a sore back. Realizing that the field of sensations that is my body is a constantly changing dance, my commitment is to not push anything away and to remain open to whatever I'm experiencing. With this curiosity, I usually then bring my awareness into the breath, grounding in the actual experience of breathing. I then return to the breath whenever I find my attention pulled back into thought, naming what thoughts had grabbed my attention. You can also work with the lens of your attention during meditation. If you find yourself struggling, maybe even having difficulty finding a breath, you can expand your attention into listening, or open into seeing yourself from the moon, or go into exploring the sensations of your body. All of these create more space in your consciousness. When the tightness in your mind begins to let go to spaciousness, you can then refocus the lens of your attention on the breath. A close cousin to working with the lens of attention is the ability to change one's focus. There will be times in your meditation when sounds, sensations, feelings, or emotions become so strong that naming them does not free up your attention. You can then shift your focus to the distraction. If it is a sound, notice that you are paying attention to hearing and then listen to it. Really listen. Pretend that this is the last time you will ever hear this sound in your life. How about Andy Cockadoodle doing, huh? Hey, I gotta share that. If the distraction is a sensation in your body, describe it to yourself, allowing your mind to be a finger, ultimately exploring what is happening. In that one area, there are many sensations arising on passing away. Tingles, searing, warmth, coolness, throbbing, aching, pulsing, shooting pains. Observe if it is dull or sharp, moves or has boundaries, appears and disappears, or is constant, or if it is connected with any other sensations. If it is an emotion, bring your attention to where it lives in your body, describing what you find there. When you are done exploring it or you discover that you have spaced out again, return to your primary focus. Eventually, your attention will be stable and strong enough to be present for all your thoughts, feelings, and sensations as they pass through you. When something is repeatedly grabbing your attention, become fascinated. See how it behaves. Does it come and go? Does it stay? Is it sharp or fuzzy, loud or quiet, agitated or subtle, light or heavy? Does it have a vibration? Watch it change and move. If you lose connection, go back to the breath. This can be done with a pain in your knee, boredom, sleepiness, anger, a full tummy, or even joy. At the beginning, you will find yourself captured by thought for most of your returning time. The amount of time you spend in thinking doesn't matter. The power is in returning. Doing this work is like sitting in front of a gigantic boulder, so big that it is all you can see. It feels like someone has given you a little tiny hammer and pick and said, "Break open this rock." You may laugh hysterically, saying that this is impossible. But, as one of my teachers told me, we chip away here and chip away there at the seeming solidity of thought. Then one day we hit a fissure in the rock and it cracks open in front of us, allowing us to see what the rock had always blocked, the actual experience of life. Knowing that nothing needs to be set in stone and that our job is to listen to what works for us, it is important to remember that this is a time to connect with yourself, to listen to you. The only other important thing is to choose a focus, returning to it over and over, noticing what takes you away. This will develop your ability to be curious, so you can develop the strength of attention that you need to be able to unhook from all the thoughts and feelings that block your ability to be fully alive. You can end your returning practice in a number of ways. Some people set a timer to go off at the end of a predetermined time. If your life allows it, you can also sit until it feels right to end. If a timer is too invasive and if your schedule does not allow for an open-ended sit, you can record silence for the length of time you want to sit and then add the sound of a bell at the end. Then, whenever you sit, you can play it back and the bell will notify you when the allotted time is up. The beauty of a returning practice is that nothing is truly a distraction. Everything can be included. All of your life experiences can be quite fascinating when not resisted. This sound or that thought or the feeling racing through your body is your life. The place you are heading to is an open and spacious awareness that can include it all. As your ability to be present becomes stronger, you may only spend a few minutes at the beginning of your meditation grounding in a primary focus, and then you simply watch with an alert and receptive attention. The unfolding of life within and around you. A moment of sound, a sensation in your foot, a thought from the past, a feeling in your belly, all arising and passing away, nothing to hold on to, nothing to push away, all received by an attentive and spacious acceptance that allows us to merge with the deep peace that is always with us. Don't let the mind rush you in this process of awakening. You may spend a week or a year just adding moments of awareness into your daily life before you are ready to sit and deeply listen to yourself. And even with the daily listening time, you may not notice for a long time how much this art of simply returning is transforming you until you find yourself in the middle of a crisis with a sense of calm and clarity you've never had before. A gradual awakening, for at times it may look like nothing is happening, but each moment of returning to your focus is another drop of water in the bucket of your awakening. One day, without being aware that the bucket is filling, you will discover that you are really present for the miracle that is your life. I don't know if you saw me, highlighting a few things in here. I continue to share. Listen, I've read this book many times, but it's been a long time since I read it. And each day that I'm reading these chapters in this book, my life has happened the day before. So all of this about, talking about a bucket filling up, I mean, I could show you. I just got this new bucket yesterday, and I was singing the song, there's a hole in the bucket, dear Liza, dear Liza. And I was like really focused on this bucket, filling it up with water, and that here I just read about. I mean, all of this in here is just fascinating to me. The power of returning, and just resisting and all of that. I love this book. I hope anybody who's listening is enjoying it along with me.